We start with a man who is painting in the church. He tells us about his past being a thief and how he has given on that job to be a painter. He tells us that he has been painting for a long time in the church, but till now he has not got any payment. So he goes to the church father to ask him for the money. But when he reaches there, he finds out that the father has died due to a disease called plague. Seeing this, he gets very disappointed because now he will not get any payments. Then he sees father's dress and wearing it, he decides to become a father because the father has no shortage of anything, be it money or respect. Then we see Lorenzo who is running away in fear of Gerbino. He always trying to push his luck, but it doesn't work for him. Sometimes he pushes too far and ends up in trouble. Eventually, he managed to escape Gerbino this time, but Gerbino doesn't give up and tells his men to capture him under any circumstances. After which Lorenzo's friend give him a horse and ask him to leave the city, and he does. After this, we see a girl named Pampa who is crying because recently his parents passed away due to the plague disease. Just then, Gerbino comes and comforts her, then asks what she will do with her father's debts. Her father was in a massive debt before he passed away, and he has promised Pampa, his daughter, to Gerbino for his debts. She tells him that the king of Russia is going to come soon, and she is going to marry him. Hearing this, Gerbino tells Pampa that her father had taken too much from him, and now, after his death, all her property has become his. So if she wants to save the house, then she has to marry him. On the other hand, we see Lorenzo is still running, and Gerbino's guard are behind him. Meanwhile, he sees a man who is carrying his dead friend on a cart. He got some screw loose, by the way. When Lorenzo asks him for direction, he starts talking about his friend who used to work as a gardener nearby and had some skills which were being deaf and dumb. Lorenzo gives up and leaves by saying being deaf and dumb is not a skill. As the men behind him are getting close, he climbs a tree and Gerbino's guard overtake. But soon the branch of the tree breaks and Lorenzo falls down and faints. Then some nuns come to him and takes him to the church, and this is where the previous gardener used to work. Then the two nuns, seeing him unconscious, start playing with him and saying he came from heaven and might be an angel. Lorenzo also regains consciousness, but he still does nothing and realizes that being dumb and deaf might be a skill after all, so he decides to use it. After this, the head of the nuns comes there and the nuns tells her that this man is dumb and deaf, and then they hire him as a gardener. Next, while Lorenzo is taking a bath, then two nuns come and join him. We can understand by seeing this that the reason why the nuns want a dumb and deaf gardener is if those people would do anything with him, he will not be able to tell anyone about it. Next, we see Pampa in the church with his friends and their boyfriends. This is where Pampa tells them she has a second home in that city where she will marry the king of Russia away from Gerbino. Pampa asks everyone to come over there. Just then Gerbino comes and asks her what she is doing. Pampa says they were just praying, and Gerbino starts harassing some of her friends. Then the painter, now he is the father as well, stops him and makes him leave. Now, because the king of Russia has to have some time to come, and Pampa doesn't want to be with Gerbino either, so she makes a plan to stay in the church among the nuns to keep herself untouched. And it is the same church in which Lorenzo works. Next, in the church, when two nuns were preparing Pampa, that's when she sees Lorenzo. The nuns smile and says that he is sent from heaven and works here as a gardener, and he is dumb and deaf. After a while, when a nun is taking Lorenzo inside the woods alone, Pampa notices them and understands what is going on here. At the same time, we also see that Pampa is feeling very jealous. Here, King Georginsky also reaches the place. At first, they mistake Gerbino as Pampa's father. Then he tells them that he is the one who is going to marry Pampa. Knowing this, Georginsky angrily leaves, but then a man tells him outside that Pampa is waiting for him in another house in the city. Then Georginsky leaves to go there with his men. On the other hand, when Lorenzo is in his room, then two nuns bring food for him. Actually, they knew what the rest of the nuns do to Lorenzo, and they want some of that too, and Lorenzo is happy with that as well. The next day, when Pampa and the two nuns are carrying hot water for Lorenzo, she tells the nuns that whatever they are doing to Lorenzo is sin. The nun says that's why it feels delicious and there is nothing wrong with that, and that she is just feeling jealous. Pampa gets angry and she pours hot water on Lorenzo's head and leaves. On the other side, when Georginsky is going to meet Pampa, just then Gerbino attacks him, where all of Georginsky's men are killed, but he managed to escape. And here Pampa's feeling is increasing for Lorenzo when she watches him washing himself, and it occurs to her mind that he might not be deaf, but dumb maybe, because she hears him singing in the garden. Later on, she goes alone to feed Lorenzo, then she covers his face so that Lorenzo doesn't know which nun she is and kisses him, then gets disappeared. To Lorenzo, it was nothing he had ever experienced by a kiss before. After a few days, it's time for Pampa to leave, but she tells the head nun before leaving that Lorenzo is not deaf and that he's been playing this whole time. Actually, Pampa did not want to see Lorenzo with any other nuns. That's why she exposed him. Now that nuns come to know about this, they immediately fire him. Then Lorenzo is sitting outside. Just then, Pampania passes by. Lorenzo requests Pampania to take him with her, and she agrees. On the other side, we see Georginsky sees a girl in the river. Then he starts talking to her, as Georginsky tells her that he's going to marry a girl named Pampania. Hearing this, the girl lies that she is Pampania. Now, since Georginsky had never seen Pampania, he trusts her words and believes her. Also, he is astonished by her beauty. On the other hand, Lorenzo and Pampania arrive at her house, and while they are talking, Lorenzo tells he is deeply in love with the girl, the one who had blindfolded his eyes that day, and he is searching for her to find her by any means. Pampania says that if he kisses someone else, he will forget her. For example, how about if you kiss me? She says. Actually, Pampania wants Lorenzo to find out that she is the one who blindfolded him that day. They are getting close to do it, but that's when gerbino arrives with his guards. Seeing him, Lorenzo talks about fighting with him, and when the fight begins, Lorenzo can't stand with gerbino, and Pampania stops him before gerbino can kill him though, and says that if something happened to Lorenzo, she will not marry him. Hearing this, gerbino stops fighting, but he imprisons Lorenzo. After a while, Pampania feels that gerbino could kill Lorenzo at any time, so she tells gerbino to get married. At the same time, she adds that he has to leave Lorenzo free, and he promises to do so, but Lorenzo has to leave the city. Then sends two of his guards to bring the father for the wedding. Then after the father comes, Pampania gives him money and asks him to delay the wedding as much as he can, and the father also agrees. Here, two gerbino's guards go to release Lorenzo into the woods, but he knocks them out and flees back to kill gerbino. He then sees Georginsky on his way to Pampania's house, so he too sets out to go in the same way. On the other hand, Pampania and gerbino start getting married. The father starts delaying the marriage at the behest of Pampania, due to which gerbino gets very angry and forces him to finish the job, and the father also starts doing the same out of fear. Then Georginsky also arrives. Seeing the gun in his hand, gerbino starts running. At the same time, Lorenzo also shows up, and then Georginsky and Lorenzo together kill all the gerbino's guards. Eventually, Georginsky fights alone, in which gerbino is about to lose it. Just then, Lorenzo asks to let him kill gerbino, and Georginsky agrees. Then gerbino starts fighting with Lorenzo by standing on the edge of a well. During this fight, gerbino falls into the well, due to which he dies. After all this, Pampania comes and tells Georginsky that she cannot marry him because she is in love with Lorenzo, but he tells her that she is not the Pampania that he met in the lake, and he wants to marry the same Pampania that he met in the water earlier. In the meantime, the girl from the lake comes, and Georginsky is like, "That's my Pampania." Here we learn that the girl is none other than Pampania's friend Melissa. Georginsky is very happy to see Melissa. Then Pampania turns around to see Lorenzo is leaving. She proposes for marriage and says she is in love with him, but Lorenzo says that he has to find and marry that same girl who kissed him while he was blindfolded. Hearing this, Pampania asks Lorenzo to kiss her just once and then he can leave, and Lorenzo does. Just then, he finds out that the girl was none other than Pampania herself. Only then he agrees to the marriage.